Maya Angelou once wrote, "Listen to yourself, and in that quietude, you might hear the voice of God." My name is Robert Rosales, and you're listening to His Love is Greater Than. This story is called Led by God. The car heater was running full blast, but it was still freezing cold inside the blue Oldsmobile as Monica steered onto the main road. It was a few minutes before midnight, December 31st. All of the businesses were closed and every house was pitch dark. Everyone is out celebrating, Monica thought, as yet another spasm of pain gripped her like a vice. Across the nation, millions of people were eagerly awaiting the arrival of a brand new year. Monica, alone and terrified, had a different kind of arrival to contend with. 20 minutes before Monica had been warm and cozy, gabbing with friends and having a wonderful time. She and her friend Dawn were swapping pregnancy stories and trying to guess which of their babies would be the first to arrive. Both women were due in early February. Monica, who was separated from her fiancé, was looking forward to the arrival of her second child. So was her 7-year-old daughter, Amanda. Amanda was with her grandparents now, on their way to the family's beach cottage. Monica had stopped off to spend a few minutes with friends before making the 45-minute drive to join them. It was just past 11, and Monica was buttoning her coat to leave when suddenly she felt a tiny cramp in her abdomen. "Are you okay?" her friends asked, concerned. It was probably just a false labor pain, Monica said, refusing their offer to rush her to the hospital. "I'm not due for another 5 weeks yet." But starting her car, Monica felt a second cramp, stronger than the first. Amanda was early. Maybe this baby will be too, she thought, and headed to her folks' house to find her sister Terry. A few blocks from home, Monica cried out in alarm as her water broke. "Stay calm," she told herself. "The pains are still far apart. There's plenty of time before the baby comes." But the house was dark. Terry must have gone out with her boyfriend, Monica guessed. She briefly considered running inside and calling 911, but the hospital was only 12 miles away. "I can make it easily," she thought. It wasn't long before Monica deeply regretted her decision to drive on. "I'm in labor," she cried out, as an intense contraction took hold and refused to let go. "I need help. I can't have this baby alone." Monica sped to the nearest payphone, but the phone had been removed, and every business in sight was closed for the holiday. It was 12 o'clock midnight, and there wasn't another car on the road anywhere. Frantic, Monica turned off the main road and steered down residential streets, searching for even one house with its lights burning. "Please, God, let someone be home," she prayed, turning into a cul-de-sac where she discovered several houses with lights and cars. Monica pulled in front of one house, threw open the car door, and struggled unsteadily to her feet. But at the last second, something told her to head the other way, across the street to a different house. The front lawn was as wide as a football field as Monica stumbled to the porch. "Please, someone call an ambulance," she cried out, pressing the bell with one hand while banging the door with the other. "I'm having a baby right now." Diane Minter, 35, was awakened from a sound sleep by a sudden commotion at her mom's front door. Diane, her husband Clyde, and their 3 kids had traveled all the way from Lynchburg, Virginia, through falling snow to spend New Year's Day with her parents, George and Joyce Ware. Diane was exhausted, but the instant her mom called her name, she was on her feet and racing to the stairs, still dressed in a pair of red pajamas. "Oh my!" Diane exclaimed, when she saw the very pregnant woman all but collapse in her dad's arms. "Lay her down so I can examine her," she instructed. "I need an ambulance," Monica sobbed. "I can feel my baby coming." "I've already called 911, Diane's mom calmly spoke. "You certainly picked the right house to come to. My daughter is a labor and delivery nurse." Diane's dad gathered up sheets and blankets while her brother-in-law, Dale, a former emergency medical technician, held Monica's hand and monitored her pulse. "I can see something coming," Diane said, after yet another contraction, only she wasn't sure it was the baby's head. When Monica visited her obstetrician just 2 days ago, the baby had been lying sideways in her womb. 5 weeks was plenty of time for the baby to shift into proper position, the doctor had assured Monica. But that was only 2 days ago. Diane silently worried. For Diane knew all too well that if the baby was still transverse, there was a good chance Monica might deliver an arm or a foot first, or the cord could get caught, and without an emergency C-section, Monica's preterm infant might even die. Monica burst into tears the moment she spotted Diane in the doorway. "Thank you," she sobbed. "I know God must have led me to your house last night. It certainly was a New Year's Eve I'll never forget," Diane replied. This story was excerpted from Woman's World magazine and was submitted by Bill Holton. I found this story in Chicken Soup for the Christian Family Soul. It makes you wonder how God really leads us to where we need to be, and how Monica was led to Diane's family's home, where an intensive care, this is a nurse who works delivering babies all the time, and her husband, an EMT, who couldn't ask for anybody better to be at the home to answer her calls, especially when she was asking God to lead her. Oftentimes we wonder if we can hear God's voice, or how we can hear God's voice. And we try desperately to hear God's voice all the time. Proverbs 3:6 says, "Listen for God's voice in everything you do, everywhere you go. God is the one who will keep you on track." Mother Teresa once wrote, "Listen in silence, because if your heart is full of other things, you cannot hear the voice of God." That I can see is true. Sometimes we become so distracted with everything around us, it's really difficult to just ground ourselves and just really listen to what God's voice is saying. My pastor, Rick Warren, he wrote a quote. He actually said, "We often miss hearing God's voice simply because we aren't paying attention." So how do we pay attention? What can we do to better listen to God's voice? I looked online and I found everything from more prayer to find a place in silence where you can just commune with God and talk to God and simply write down what comes to mind. And I came up with I found six good tips to get closer to God and to be able to hear God. Number one is position yourself close to God. So you need to be you need to understand that the relationship that you have with our God, with your God, is a personal one. So you should be able to talk and express yourself just like you would like your best friend or a sibling. God is there to listen to you and be honest with him. Number two is find a place of regular service to God. And if you practice and you continue to go to service, he sees that and he feels that. Number three is, maybe find a spot at night or create a ritual where you're lying quietly before you go to bed and just listen for God's voice. Number four, just remember when he does call, respond eagerly. Let him know that you hear his voice. Most of all, number five is if you do hear his guidance, if you do hear us and you feel his presence and he gives you direction, obey him. Obey him. The last thing you need to do is read and study the Word of God. This will help you interpret his messages clearer. These are 6 tips that you can do to hear the voice of God by calming the storm around you, just like Jesus did when he was on the boat. If you calm the storm around you, then his voice will sound like bells. You'll hear them clearly. You'll hear his voice clearly over everything. And always find time to read and study the Word of God. Again, my name is Robert Rosales, and this is His Word is Greater Than. So if you like this story, please subscribe or give me a like and share this message with anybody that you know that might need uplifting, or if you just continue to listen to it yourself. And if you know anybody or you have a testimony you want to share so that I can read out loud, just email me at hisloveisgreaterthan@gmail.com and I'll review it and share it. Again, thank you for listening. Until the next one.